Hey, welcome to another episode of 6 Degrees of Associations. I'm your host, Lucas McCann. With me today, the one, the only, Dave Will, co-founder, CEO of PropFuel. Welcome, Dave.
Thank you. Are you in New Orleans?
Oh, I wish. As often as I can be, I'm in New Orleans. My folks used to live down there, and hence the Jazz Fest Postival. I made that a habit years ago that I go every year to Jazz Fest with a group of friends.
Yeah. So where are you located? I just assumed you were in New Orleans based on the poster behind you, but where are you located?
I'm in Northern Virginia. I'm in Falls Church, just outside of Washington, D.C. It's the place to be.
You're in the heart of associations. You are right in the heart cavity.
You got it. How about you?
That's not a thing, a heart cavity.
Clearly
I'm not
or are those valves? I don't know.
I'm not a medicaltician, so clearly I don't know what they call that area. But you're right in the heart of it all, right? Is what I'm trying to say. I'm in Boston, just in a small beach town south of Boston.
From Boston?
From New England. Yeah, I grew up in Connecticut, and I've lived all around New England. I left for a little while, went to Pennsylvania for school, and came back. I don't think I'll ever leave New England. You know, we've got a reputation to hold up here. It's funny. I think people in New England are highly moral people, generally speaking, with dirty words coming out of their mouths regularly. You know, but whereas you go down south and there's a little less cussing, as they say. But I find that
proper cussing. That's all. It's still cussing in their language. It's just proper cussing.
But I don't know that there's any more moral fortitude down south or in the Midwest than there is in the Northeast. I think it all comes down to communication styles.
I generally speaking, everybody gives the same Fs. You know, whether you're north or south.
That's good. So I guess it's a rated PG podcast. Fair enough.
No, not at all. But we'll get into that later.
All right.
Well, are there a lot of associations up in New England? Is that how you kind of ventured into our industry, into our space?
No, there's not really. I mean, sure, there's New York and Boston, and it's a surprising number. So I have a company called PropFuel. It's a software company. We have 270 clients, all utilizing PropFuel to do a better job of listening to their members, engaging them better over email, SMS, and over their websites as well, where they can ask questions and capture insight in order to engage better. That's, in a nutshell, that's what PropFuel does. It's a listening system to accompany all the other tools you're using to communicate with members. But having said that, of the 270 clients we have, I would say, and this is a bit of a guess, but I would say more than half are probably in and around the DC area. Naturally, we have Chicago and Florida, but then just like anywhere else in the country, California, Oklahoma, some Midwest, there's a significant number of associations in Massachusetts. So yeah, there's some up here, but certainly not what you're experiencing down there in Northern Virginia.
No, they're everywhere here. I mean, between Old Town, Alexandria, Washington, D.C., and the surrounding DMV, I mean, I always joke you could go in some of those areas, and if you're a golfer, which I'm not anymore, different story for another podcast, but you could hit a pitching wedge and probably knock off 3 or 4 of them before it hit the ground. I mean,
it's incredible. Right? It's walking down the street in D.C., it just seems like and they're all beautiful, like these beautiful buildings with the word association or society on it.
Yeah, big buildings, empty of people. Yes.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit of the origin story for yourself in associations. You woke up one day and just said, "Yes, associations are where my destiny lies."
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah,
different.
Man. It's funny. I do meet people every now and then that have always had this service mentality. One of my employees, actually, who used to work for associations, her entire career has been in the association community. She worked for the YMCA, or was it the YWCA? Now that I think about it, I can't remember. But she was on staff. I think it was the YMCA. She was on staff there in high school, And
Wow.
that is what triggered her passion for community-oriented work, like what associations offer.
Yeah.
That was not the case for me. I went to school and worked for Nielsen. The most people know them as a ratings company. I worked in the consumer goods sides of things, and I worked for Kraft General Foods, and I ended up going to Penn State to get my MBA, and then I left that and worked for PricewaterhouseCoopers. So all these big organizations in consumer goods. And then I got fired from my job one day, and there's another story for you. But I got fired
We all
from my
have
job.
one of those. That's for a different,
Well,
that is for a different episode.
you're not an adult until you get fired. That's the way I see it. So I got fired one day, and the idea of picking up another job like the one I had just gave me this dark feeling in my stomach. And at around the same time, a friend of mine, an acquaintance, I should say, somebody I'd done work with, came to me and said, "Hey, listen, I heard you're on the market." And I was like, "Is it matter?" And I was 30. I was 30 years old. I'm 53 now. And so I listened to his idea. He didn't want to leave his job, but I happened to be out of a job at this point. So I picked up the idea he had, and we ran with it for a little while, and it evolved ultimately into a learning management system before I even knew what a learning management system was. So we started capturing all this content and webinars. It's like year 2000. No, 2001, because we actually started this business in September of 2001.
Okay.
Which is kind of an interesting time to start an internet learning company. And again, I didn't know what the word LMS was, but having these inroads, this is all an answer to how I got into associations. It's also a little bit of my background, because at the core, I'm an entrepreneur. I like to think of myself as a creator. When I look in the mirror, I'm like, in the morning, every morning, I look at myself, "You're a creator." That's what I say to myself. And you're handsome. And so that's
good enough.
And I am good
Doggone
enough.
it. People like you, Dave.
One of the greatest SNL skits was Michael Jordan back in the day doing his affirmations. All right, so we're in the consumer goods industry. I started working with Walmart, and they had a need to bring together all of their manufacturers that are using their software platform internally called Retail Link. And again, I had started this company at this point that ultimately turned into what we called Peach New Media. And they had the need to bring all the Retail Link users together to learn how to use Retail Link better. Retail Link was Walmart's proprietary platform. And guess what the name of it was? Retail Link Users Group. And a users group made up of tens of thousands of people is very similar to an association, right? Lots of very similar characteristics. So we started working with this user group, and it became a huge part of our business, almost scary big, like a little too, which is true with a lot of Walmart vendors. Is it becomes
You
a
have
huge
to be big. Yeah, you got to go big. Yeah,
and so we had this idea of trying to find other organizations like this Retail Link user group to see if Retail Link user group has a need for content. Educational content that's hosted on a website that they can access over and over again. Kind of sounds like an LMS, doesn't it? So again, no idea what to call it. So we call it a learning on the internet tool. And then somebody else came up with a much better name that you could turn into an acronym. So we found ASAE back in the early 2000s. And that was our entry into the association world. And to be honest, as soon as we landed at ASAE, I remember getting a booth at ASA Annual. Gosh, where was it? Might have been San Diego. When was that? I can't remember. But it was somewhere in the early 2000s. And
there used to only be like 12 spots, and we would just circle around those 12 spots. It felt like we just go
There's
back. When are we going back to Toronto? When are we going back to
Oh yeah, locations, right? So like right away, we found what I would call product market fit. Like right away, people are like, wait a minute. So we could take all of our CDs and DVDs and our VHS tapes and put them on the internet. Like seriously, this is how people were talking to us at the at this ASAE conference in the early 2000s. And of course, we were talking about webinars and recording webinars and hosting that in an organized way on the internet. And so we started selling the learning management system. Well, fast forward 14 years and from beginning to end, and I sold Peach New Media to what is now Community Brands, or Momentive. They just changed their name to Momentive. So
okay.
Momentive
Breaking news.
owned.
I hadn't heard that.
Well, so that was back in 2015. They own they own a product called Freestone, and Freestone was our product that we had in Peach New Media. Freestone is the type of peach, and so Peach New Media was the company, Freestone was the product, and now Momentive owns that.
Got it.
So that's how I got into associations. Then, so shortly after selling that, about a year, maybe it was 2 years later, one of my guys from Peach New Media and I started PropFuel. And PropFuel now is a, like I said, a listening platform software designed to help associations ask questions of their members, to capture insight, to create a more personalized member experience over time. That's what we do.
I've secretly been wanting to do something in that engagement space from a digital platform standpoint. I just looking around.
You just described every vendor in our space, by the way. Engagement in some sort of digital way. Like all the AMSs, all the analytics systems, like everybody's. Like, it's so hard to describe what you do as a software company because you're like, oh, we do engagement. And like, okay, so does everyone else.
Do engagement differently than XYZ or ZYX or fill in the blank, right?
Fair question.
Well, how do you do it differently?
Well, I guess it depends on the category and what it is you're trying to impact, right? Like if you're looking at a Higher Logic, chances are, of course, Higher Logic has tons of different products now. But if you're looking at their core product, the community, that's the definition of what their platform does. You can buy a community platform. An email platform like Informs or Real Magnet or Exact Target or HubSpot for that matter, it's a broadcast email system. An AMS is designed to host and manage all the data around your members. And of course, beyond that, all the AMSs do crazy, wild, things and that go beyond that. Well, what we do is I describe it as a listening system. I don't know any other platform that does this. We ask questions, and based on that interaction, we create a personalized member experience. We do that over email, we do that over SMS, and we do that on people's websites, on the organization website, where questions pop up around the member journey. And based on how they answer that, let me give you an example.
Yeah, please do.
New member onboarding is such a great example. It's hard to prove ROI quickly with a new member onboarding campaign. So I'm going to give you this example because it's easier to understand. But then I'm going to give you an example of how organizations are making money using a system like PropFuel. So new members come on. And Lucas, if you ran an association and you happen to bump into a new member, and because they're wearing like this new member sign around their neck, or maybe they have a badge at a conference that says, I'm a new member of this association. New member, pointy.
They're out there.
What would you say to them? They walk up to you and they kind of look at you like dumbfounded, like lost. What would you say to them? Forget they just come with it. I'm a new member. What would you say?
I'm a question. I'm somebody who likes to ask questions.
What would you say?
So I'd probably start asking about them. Who are you? What do you do? What are you looking for? How can I help?
Yeah, I love those. Those are great questions. However, when somebody joins an association today, what happens is they go to HubSpot or they go to Informs or whatever, and they start telling people everything. Like, they know your name, they know your email, so they got that. They probably know your title and your organization. That's pretty much the bulk of what they have. Might know your gender, might know some demographics about you, but immediately they'll just say, hey, welcome to the association. We're so glad you're here. Check out all these awesome things we do. We have a conference coming up. And literally, like, no joke, no exaggeration, 50 links in the welcoming email. I've seen that a million times.
You just get thrown up on most of the time. Like, here's all the things that you should do. Engage right now.
Or the better marketers say, hey, you know what? We should break that up and break it up into little pieces. And then they just take all this informational vomit and they send it out over time. So they're not like vomiting on you, they're just spitting on you every now and then. So and by the way, it's not terrible, but it's not what we do. I think broadcast email is good. The PropFuel approach to that would be, let's start by saying, hey, welcome, we're so glad you're a member, but why did you join? Just like if you were in person, let's do that over email, or probably not SMS. You got to be careful with SMS, but the website or email. Let's have a question pop up somewhere saying, hey, we noticed you're a new member. Why did you join this? Or what can we do to serve you? Or what are your goals this year? So it starts by asking them a question, and based on how they answer that question, we now know more about them so we can serve them in a more personalized way, and it does it immediately. So based on why they answered, then it triggers all these actions that are very specific to that person. And you do that 9, 10, 12 times over the course of the first year. So now by the end of the first year, you've served them with things that are very specific to them. They've had a member experience that's been valuable, and they renew. That's the key. That's the ROI on new member onboarding campaigns that work really well, is your first year renewal rate is going to go up. But that takes a year to prove. So the more immediate response, I want to tell you this one because this is really, really cool. I'm sorry for him sitting here yapping, but this is really, really.
I want to hear, Dave. I'm learning myself, and before the day's over, PropFuel and I'll show it. Big Red M would probably need to join forces at some level, because that's a number one issue when we talk about what makes a great client and a good client. Is the good clients, we're doing business development for them. We're bringing on new sponsors, new members, new advertisers. And then we kind of pass it over to the rest of the staff team, and the handoff is not always great. And I'd say where we hand it off to, we consider ourselves at a very high level. Where we hand it off to sometimes seems like a big step down. And so this sounds like a much better solution for making a smooth, hey, you're now a member, to you're going to stay a member, and which increases lifetime value, which is a pretty easy thing to calculate. But I interrupted.
The thing to remember, though, is we're not replacing Informs or Real Magnet or Exact Target or HubSpot. In fact, we have integrations with all of those things. Those are great for sending information out, and you have to send information out. There's lots of reasons for informational emails, lots of them. But there's a time to listen to. Like, you can't have a relationship with somebody and just constantly be talking. You got to listen too. And just like we're doing, this is an exchange. Of course, I'm doing more talking and not a lot of listening. But
that's the point of the show. We don't want to hear from me, Dave.
Well, I do. I want to know more about your trips to New Orleans, and so. But the reason we exist is because listening is as important as talking. But we only have the tools in the marketplace to talk, and that's a problem. So another great example, this is an ROI. This is like ROI overnight sort of story. So Pennsylvania Medical Society, and I love this story. They've become true believers and have given us full permission to share this story. They signed on with us in January of this year. And when they signed on, they were skeptical but curious. They were like, you seem so passionate about this. And everyone we talk to says good things, but we have 6,000 expired members who we cannot get to come back to us. They are totally unresponsive. And how do we know that they're unresponsive? Because we're constantly sending them emails, trying to get them to come back, and we get zero response. No exaggeration. They were sending so many emails, and they would constantly just get zero responses. So we introduced this concept, PropFuel, to them, and we gave them a 90-day out too. We're like, look, if it doesn't work, if you get zero responses, or even just some that you're not impressed with, if you're not impressed by this, you have 90 days, and we'll just cancel the whole thing. Was the claim we gave them, because they were just so skeptical. It was kind of like Green Eggs and Ham. Remember that story, the novel?
Absolutely. I got two kids. I've read it many times.
Yeah. So the guy's like, I don't want it. I know I don't like Green Eggs and Ham. So Pennsylvania Medical Society was kind of like that. And so we set up this campaign to go out to the same 6,000 people And would you believe, like the night before we sent our campaign, they sent another dang email, their email. And
Just to sabotage you.
when I heard this, I was like, why? Like, why? Just
It was probably already automated, from 60 days ago, and they never even thought about it.
maybe that was it. So they sent this email out one morning to 6,000 people. I'm gonna tell you about the email in a second. But before it went out, I got an email from my contact over there, Lauren, and Lauren said, Dave, I just want to say, like, this took a lot longer to build this campaign. We can build 6 emails in like 15 minutes using our other platform. I think they use Active Campaign or something like that. Like we can build 6 emails in like 15 minutes. PropFuel was a little more time consuming. So like we don't need more things to do. So I'm not totally optimistic about this. I know we have our 90-day out. So that's just where we're at right now. So the email goes out, and within a few hours, they had hundreds of responses. By the time the campaign was done, they had, the number was, I think the number was 599 responses to this campaign that had 0 interaction. Of the 599, like 80% of them were like, yeah, I'm in. Where do I sign up? And then of the people that said, yeah, I'm in, where do I sign up? I think a third of them did it instantly, and another third they had to trickle into it, and another third they had to nurture, really nurture to get them to pay. But now you're down from 6,000 to a few hundred people that might deserve a phone call to get them to sign up. In the meantime, you've made $100,000 off of this one campaign where you were trying everything you could before and it wasn't working. So the email, it was really simple. All it was an email that said, hey, we noticed your membership had expired. We don't want to lose you. I wish I could remember the question, but it was something like, are you planning to, or are you interested in returning, or are you planning, this is what it was, are you planning to renew your membership? Your membership has expired. Are you planning to renew, yes or no? And a lot of them are yes. It said no. It took them to another question. It said, well, why not? And then based on why not, it would create a conversation with them based on their answer. Oh, I'm retiring. Well, did you know we have a retirement program? So that methodology, we call that conversational engagement, and it gets this outrageous engagement level from people that participate in it, probably because it's so simple. But anyway, those are 2 stories of how PropFuel has worked.
The data nerd in me immediately goes back to what you just said and said, okay, well, you made them from 0 to, let's just call it $100,000. If it took you, an extra 2 hours to write the campaign as opposed to the 15 minutes it took you an active campaign, you're making around $918 an hour. So as long as somebody's not spending, as long as it's not costing you more than $918 an hour for the person who's developing the campaign, which I know they're not, because there's nobody in the association market making $900 an hour developing campaigns, sounds like PropFuel was a win.
I don't know where you came with 918. I'm not a math guy, but they made well over 100,000. I think the number was closer to $150,000 off of this single email. It was unbelievable, and that's just one example of, and that's unusual, by the way. That's why I like to tell the story, because it's an outlier, but it's a pretty good outlier. Oftentimes it's a series of campaigns that ultimately add up to rather big numbers. You know what? One more way asking questions and helping an organization is in building profiles, right? So we all want to know more about people, and we store that in our AMS, or another engagement platform, right? You store that in our
Ideally.
AMS. And the way we get it, yeah, I know, ideally. The way we get it right now is we say, hey, will you update your member profile? And nobody ever does. Like, why would you? Why would you click on the button knowing you have to log in and fill out a form? Like, I've been to the doctor before. I have to do it there, but I don't have to do it for my email. But how about if the association sends a note saying, hey, we have your title as Chief Doofus Officer. Is that correct? I mean, whatever you have as your title
Okay.
is
I
your
thought
title.
You were actually saying just make something up that's wrong, but okay.
No, but it's wrong, and so naturally you want to correct it, and you're like, no, that's not correct. You fill it out on the next page and submit, and boom, it through the integration, it goes right into your AMS. And there's organizations getting thousands of profile updates every time they send out an email. It's awesome. Absolutely awesome, the amount of data you can collect just by asking a couple questions here and there.
Yeah. What I love about that is there's so many great books that talk about the power and compounding power of relationship and conversation.
Green Eggs and Ham being one of them.
Absolutely.
Like, look at what happened
Absolutely.
there.
One of tens of thousands. And it talks specifically the science around making deposits into the relationship. And what we're doing by asking questions is getting the members to make deposits into their associations. It's little bits of them. I'm having a conversation with you. I'm depositing my time. And the more deposits you make into the relationship, the harder it is for you to remove yourself from the relationship.
Yeah.
This is like the foundation of Facebook, right? If you ever read the book Hooked. And they talk about how
I
they
have not,
intentionally
but I'm gonna
make you go back. It's an older book. It's about like the development of Silicon Valley and the development of social media and all of the how they made it addictive as cigarettes. But at the basis of that, what they talked about was if I could get you to post your pictures and your information and your thoughts onto a platform, there's going to be a visceral reaction to you having to leave the platform. And so you'll never leave, because it will mean you're leaving a part of yourself behind. And so subconsciously, you don't want to do that. And so what's great is you're creating like this connection with the association by making these deposits. I'm telling you about myself. I tell you I go to New Orleans. I tell you I have 2 kids, right? We're developing this relationship here, even in this. But you're forcing the same thing to happen, because you're right. If it's just one way and you're never getting the member to talk back or converse back or deposit part of themselves, it's much easier for them to just kind of cut and go and not pay and not renew.
Yeah. And with anything that's one-sided, it's easy to leave. Like, I unsubscribe from emails all the time when it's all about them and there's nothing appealing to me. So the new currency is attention. I heard that somewhere. And how do you get people's attention? Well, you show them something that's really relevant. And somebody told me once, well, our attention spans are really short. But I don't believe that. I just think we have really good filters. Like, we have unbelievable filters. You know, I have on my phone, go to the home screen. Oh my God, think about Spotify. I was just thinking about podcasts in there. But I have Instagram as my social media of choice. You know, that's my opioid on my phone here. And when I'm flipping through Instagram, I'm flipping and flipping. Boom, I see something interesting. It's got my attention. And in fact, so much so, I might go down a rabbit hole for 20 minutes on that particular topic or that particular feed. So I don't lack attention. I just have a really good filter. So we need to do that with our members too, is understand them and their interests enough so that you can send them things that they will stop on. Send them something that's relevant to them. You can't send them a whole Instagram feed hoping that they're going to find something in there that's relevant to them. It's just not going to happen. There's no association that has a newsletter as intriguing as Instagram. So nobody's going to flip through it all looking for the one thing that's interesting to them. You got to know your members well enough to know what is relevant to them. And if you don't know, ask them.
Yeah. Well, the Instagram algorithm is also watching, where do you stop, Dave? And if you don't want to go down that rabbit hole, in 2 more scrolls, it's going to force you to try to go down. It's going to try to force you to go down that rabbit hole because you stopped at content like this. Okay, in 2 more scrolls, start feeding him in content like that because we think he's interested in that. And so it's guessing based on your actions, but the aspect of asking them questions about themselves, going back to PropFuel again, I think it's really fascinating, really smart, because this is where it doesn't become PG on the show. Is I think it just shows you give a shit about the members, as opposed to just being very selfish about, I want you to promote these programs, I want you to participate here, I want you to come to my events. Like, no, just stop and care and say, why are you really here? Yeah.
You're listening. How do you show you care about somebody, but you listen to them? And I know it's a stretch to listen to a friend talk or listen to your spouse talk at dinner. That's a stretch, but it's not that far a stretch. We are treating our members as if they're sheep and we're talking at them. I don't know. Do we talk at
Yeah.
sheep? I don't know what we do with sheep, but
Some people do. I mean, if you
but
get really bored out in the field and you're a shepherd, what else are you going to do?
it is not a lecture. This is an exchange that you are having with your members. And yet we only have the tools. It's nobody's fault. I could go through the evolution of email and broadcast and fax machines all the way back in the day. It's nobody's fault. This is just the tools that have evolved, and we're trying to correct something that we believe is broken. The way members are engaged is imperfect. It is not working as well as we want it to, and there's an obvious reason for it. It's because we're talking at people 24/7, and sometimes you got to listen.
More often than not, you have to listen. I mean, and you want to get somebody engaged with something. You want to get to something that's interesting. Most people think they're interesting, right? A lot of people think that they're interesting. And so have them talk about themselves and they'll be engaged, right? If you can, you know the type, you start posing them some things and what they really want to do is tell you about themselves, which is,
oh my gosh,
which is great. That's interesting. That's engaging. And if that's the start of the relationship and the conversation, so be it.
I heard this anecdote. I'd love to say it was me, but I was, let's just say it as if it was me. I was on an airplane and I met a person on the airplane next to me, an older woman, and I think I asked her one question. She has talked and told me about her grandkids and her dog and stuff and all this stuff. And we got off the plane. I hardly said a word, and we got off the plane. She said, "You are the nicest person." And it's all because, now this is an anecdote I heard from somebody else, but the point being, like, you give somebody a chance to talk and they're going to love you. Like, people want to be able to tell you things, and we don't create that environment for the members. There's also the voice of the member, so it's not just always clicking on a yes or no multiple choice or something like that. There's the voice too. Like, there's a lot of opportunities for open-ended feedback from members. There's tactical ways to capture it so you maximize that, and then of course you can use AI and great tools to study collections of text that you're getting from people. But anyway, like, there's lots of ways to listen to your members. Transactional and behavioral data has been around forever, and it's really, really good. That's what Instagram is using, behavioral and transactional data. And that's what AMSs are designed to do. That's what marketing automation systems do. They observe behavioral and transactional data. We're going after what we call zero-party data. We're going after that data where you just ask people stuff like you would in a conversation.
I like that. I've never heard that term. That's new to me. I'll go look it up unless you just made it up and there's
zero-party
not anything out there
data?
about it. Yeah.
No, it's a thing, like third-party data and second-party data. I actually had to read up on it. I didn't quite get the differences between all of it. But yeah, zero-party data is simply asking somebody a question. What are you doing here?
Yeah, I mean, that's the data, though, that you can't go out and scrape from another source, right? You can't scrape from a third party because you don't know what they're feeling. And no system can really derive that. I mean, you could go into, there's a ton that will tell you, where Dave lives, what companies he's worked at, where he's lived,
Yeah.
how, what his family history is, what he is. If you could even buy into, some of the biological data, if you really want to get into that depth. But the zero party data, I'm going to keep saying that term so I remember to look it up. That's the invaluable stuff. And that's the stuff that can really create the right experiences, because I'm literally telling you how I'm feeling, what I'm doing, why I'm here.
I mean, respectfully, it's all valuable. Like, the behavioral and transactional data is really valuable too, but I think there's a gap if you're not capturing the zero-party data too. If you're not asking people questions, you're missing a major component of your understanding of them.
Yeah,
and
if you
of
want
the
to plug
exchange.
in, if you want to plug into one of these AI tools to help create, a better, more efficient experience for your member, and you don't have that, right? Your data is falling short of what's going to really create something that's memorable. It's going to be, garbage in, garbage out. It's not all garbage, to your point. Respectfully, there's some good stuff. Good data in, good experience out. But you layer in some of these things that you've been talking about, and you have great data in, you'll get a great experience out.
Lucas, that's the beauty of people, right? We can take garbage data, and study it, figure things out, poke around it, figure out what to let go of and what to hold on to, and produce something kind of nice. Like we can actually have a good exchange with somebody based on bad data. We can figure it out. A machine cannot. So right now,
Right.
if anyone is thinking about automation or AI, and if you're not, that's kind of a problem at this point.
Different
But
conversation. Yeah.
yeah, it's a different conversation. But like if AI or automation even is in your future, that's the basis of that. The foundation of that is all clean data. And one way to get clean data is you ask people, hey, is this your title? When do you graduate? Like, think about students. When do you graduate? What's your personal email address? Like, you know what's junk data? Is no graduation date or a school email address. That's junk data. In a year from now, it's expired. It's garbage.
Yeah, exactly. And it compounds because you just start feeding information based on that data. And it's not that it's not having a positive impact, it actually has a negative impact. It actually hurts more than you believe. Because some people take the neutral approach and say, well, it's not up to date, but it's what we had. And you're like, well, no, I'd rather send nothing in some cases than bad data.
Even like retargeting, I love a lot of what Feather does, but retargeting can be a royal pain in the ass sometimes because you buy something, and then for the next 3 weeks, you're seeing like if I buy a fishing pole, the next 3 weeks people are throwing fishing poles in front of me. I just bought a fishing pole. I don't need another fishing. I don't know why I chose that as an option. I only like fishing, but. I couldn't think of anything better. I just bought running shoes. There we go. So I just bought running shoes.
Pole somewhere behind me. I was like, what gave him this inspiration? But
so I have a question for you. Do you think, Lucas, our phones are listening to us? And the reason I say that is like when you say things like fishing pole, then next thing you know,
yeah.
Like,
Unless you've dove deep into the settings to unclick these things that are turned on by some of the apps. So we did this at a dinner party once, a group of us. We just started talking about dog food. None of us had dogs. We started talking about different dog foods and Alpo and the dogs and this and that. Again, none of us had dogs. And all of us, except I think one at the dinner party, all at some point over the next week received retargeting ads about Alpo or, Blue Chip or no, do it yourself. Test it. Go online and just search something random or say something random.
I'm doing it
whatever
right
is.
now. I got my phone
Yeah.
right here, and I'm going to go on a fishing trip, and I want to catch
Yeah.
fish with my new fishing pole. But you know what, Lucas? I need a fishing pole. Do you fish?
I used to a little bit. I have an older brother who's a professional fisherman. Yeah.
Professional fisherman. I'm saying all these words that might matter.
Fish,
Professional
swim,
fisherman
lures,
without a fishing pole, lures, and and cleaning knife. Let's see what happens.
Our audience is like, what is going on here? We're in the middle of an experiment. I'm fascinated to learn more about what PropFuel does. I mean, I obviously heard of it. I'd seen you guys around, and the brand is very well known. But getting into the actual sort of nuts and bolts of the product, I think that's fascinating what you guys do, and that you plug in with the other things. Like I could get talking about that as well. I usually don't talk as much in these episodes, but it's, that's a personal passion thing for me, just listening to people. And again, just giving a shit about what they think and say, because how can you act if you don't know otherwise?
Well, I will take your shit. Thank you. I appreciate it.
They take my shit. Well, in the interest of asking, questions and learning more, I tend to, take a left turn here and ask you a couple of questions, Dave. I teed you up before, so you had plenty of time to think about that, which is a gift because I don't always do that. So
yeah, but you're assuming I was listening, right? So, you sent me a few, and then you asked me some other ones. So I'm curious which one's going to come out. What question you have?
I just like the fun ones. I mean, I could ask you about your why, and we got a little bit of that story. And
yeah.
I don't know if there's something you want to add there. Otherwise, I was going to turn to something less serious. But
man, I got a fun little story around my why. This takes me back. I worked for SAP, a giant a German software company, is here in near Boston in this big corporate village sort of thing, and it's jacket, suit, and ties in the early '90s too. And um, at the end of the summer, it was an internship in between my first and second year of business school. At the end of the summer, Mark, my manager, walked me out and he put his arm around me and he says, Dave, good job. But I encourage you to walk a little faster and smile less because perception is reality. And like when people see you meandering through the hall and laughing too much, they think you're not busy. And so this was kind of a theme for me. And so you asked about my why. My why became the antithesis of that advice. My why became walk slow, smile more. And that's played such a huge part of my life. My kids have heard that a number of times. This was like, I'm pointing to a sign over my shoulder here behind me. It says walk slow, smile more. My son made that for me for Father's Day several years ago. My oldest son built a shirt company, a little plug for him. It's called thekonabrand.com, K-O-N-A, thekonabrand.com.
Oh, we're going to link to that. He's got great shirts. I've seen that stuff.
Oh, you have?
They
are
link to
great.
that in the episode, yeah.
And he just came out with some socks, Kona brand socks. I'm trying to get the socks up on the screen with flowers on them and stuff. Anyway, needless to say, they're Hawaiian flannel shirts. But in every Hawaiian flannel shirt, in the collar, you know what it says? Walk slow, smile more.
That's
so
awesome.
This has become a huge part of whether it's a core value or my why, I don't know. But it's all about loving the journey. It's all about enjoying the journey, not going after just the destination. It's about stopping to smell the flowers and having a good time when you're doing it. That's
awesome.
why
it's become the Will family mantra, it sounds like, too.
It's
That's
not
great.
just the Will family mantra. I'm trying to preach this to everybody in my company. I want people to enjoy what they do. I see PropFuel as a bit of a game. We're not curing cancer here. Nothing's critical. Nothing is critical. Your family's critical. You're waking up every morning and staying fit. That stuff's critical. Work is fun. It needs to be. Not always, but it needs to be. And that's my why. Walk slow, smile more, man.
I love that. And I know you say, we're not curing cancer. I've always thought about associations, and maybe this is a little intrinsic optimistic, but I do think that any organization that is supporting associations in some way just has a tremendous impact on the world. And that sounds maybe a little silly, but it's true, because these small organizations, they do have just incredible impact on business, on policy. And that's why they exist, to lift all these other businesses and industries up. And there's a lot of nonprofits who do cure cancer that maybe indirectly, we support and be a part of. So
my
I want to
friend Michael
pull you back
Hain,
a little bit on that. We're not curing cancer directly, but we're not saving the world directly. But we play a small part in the association market.
We do. And one of our clients is the International Association for the Study of Lung Cancer. And my friend Michael Hain is over there and doing a great job. And so you're right. We work very closely. We're making it easier for them to cure cancer.
That's right.
And
Good.
and 270 other associations are pursuing their mission better. You're right. There's some, if that feels good to help them do their jobs better, but they're the heroes in that story. I don't consider myself a hero in that story. I'm kind of a
supporting
sidekick.
cast members. That's us.
I'm a supporting cast member. I love to be a part of it. I'm doing this because it's really, really fun. That's why I'm doing it.
Kudos. Hear, hear. What about, I think I asked you this one too, what's something that goes on your calendar, Dave? We start afresh every year.
Oh, boy.
What's the first thing that makes it onto your calendar, personal or professional?
So historically, professionally, it's our strategic planning, which I love. Like, it just sounds so nerdy, but I really, and this is part of enjoying the journey, right? But that either happens, this year we're doing it late December. Oftentimes we do it in the first week of January. We get together and figure out, like, okay, let's look at our 3-year vision again, and let's figure out, okay, what do we need to accomplish this year? And I just really, really have fun doing that, because usually we're doing a cool location, and it's a totally immersive in-person experience. I have a lot of fun doing that. But I'm thinking more personally, I'll book trips with my family. That's oftentimes as we come to the end of one year, beginning a new one. Well, what are we going to do this year? And you know what we're going to do? I have three grown boys. One's graduating from UVM. One is already working and selling his Hawaiian flannel shirts, and another one's in the middle of UVM. And so to get them all in one spot is difficult to do. So I need to plan that in advance. I think we're going to go to Hawaii in May. That's the big trip. The other thing, though,
Sounds
this
like a
year that I'm
business
going to
trip.
do, well, yeah, no,
tax
it's
purposes.
not. Oh, I hear you. Wink, wink.
Wink, wink.
I'm just such a pansy when it comes to like the IRS. I do not stretch that line very far. Like every now and then I'll get a dinner out and I'm like, ooh, can I expense this one? That's about as far as I go playing with Uncle Sam. So
Well, they're listening too, so
yeah. You know what I'm going to do? You know what I'm going to do this year, though? I just did 75 hard. You ever hear of 75 hard?
I have.
I can't.
You did
I
it?
can't possibly go a podcast without talking about this. So I did 75 hard, and I've decided I'm going to do it every year, once for
Wow.
the year, just to kind of reset. Like I'm going to do it. So I don't know
In
when.
the summer, I assume, in Boston.
I don't know. It doesn't
You're
bother
gonna
me
do
going.
75 hard. Don't you have to run outdoors every morning?
You have to do an outdoor, so it's two 45-minute workouts. One has to be outdoors, but that doesn't concern me so much. I tend to go out and run anyway, regardless of the conditions.
Okay.
But you're right. Like February, massive snowstorm, you'd have to get out there. But you know what? Shoveling the driveway for 45 minutes would count. Like that's a hell of a workout right there.
Yeah. No, that is.
But anyway, so that's what I'm going to plan this year personally.
That's awesome. I'm big on the strategic planning too. We just finished ours up. We always do ours in the fall, and then we set quarterly rocks and nothing. It is the best. If anybody's listening and not doing annual in-person strategic planning, setting 3-year vision, and then working it back into actionable items, like I just couldn't imagine not doing that anymore.
So you said rocks. Are you doing EOS?
We do part EOS, yeah. Traction is one of the books. I think it's probably back there somewhere. And so we map it back from 3 years all the way down to everybody who leaves with quarterly rocks based on the initiatives, 3 to 5 strategic initiatives, no more than 5. Really looking for 3. Boil, consolidate, whatever you need to do. But
so I've had Gino Wickman. He's the founder of EOS. He wrote Traction. He's been on my podcast a couple times. Gino, he's an interesting guy.
That's awesome.
He just came out with a new book. What's his new book called? I lost it. It's pretty good though. Gino Wickman.
Send me the name. I'll remind you about to get hooked on the book as well.
Yeah. Thanks.
Show. What about something? So a Dave fact. Give us a Dave fact that we couldn't find online, which is harder and harder to do these days. Maybe the NSA knows it, but can't find it online. It's not on your resume.
I recently sailed a boat with a few friends from the Caribbean up to Boston, and it's not like nobody knows this, but but it's certainly not published all over the place. But I sailed a boat from the Caribbean to Boston. Took 8 days. We were offshore the entire time. Were the days when we didn't see anything but a bird or two. It was jellyfish, maybe a couple porpoise in the water, but that
A lot of
was
fishing going on.
Not really. No.
I was just trying to drop more
Fishing.
fishing.
A lot of fishing poles.
Yeah.
No, there was some, but we didn't catch anything, to be honest. It's there's a bunch of man o' war. We saw a dead whale floating on the water. Every now and then we would see a boat, and we're like 500 miles from any body of land, like at a point where we're in between like Bermuda and Virginia, and we're right in between them. Like there's nothing. We went over the Puerto Rican Trench, which is 24,000 feet under the water. 24,000 feet deep. It's insane.
What was the inspiration here?
My friend needed to move his boat. He spent a year and a half with his family in the Caribbean. They flew home, and he needed some help getting his boat up from the Caribbean back home to Boston. And so he called a few of his friends, and I took advantage of the invitation.
Somebody's got to do it.
Yeah, that was a fun trip. That's something kind of like I talk about with my close friends, and people I know well know that, but That's definitely a life experience for me, once in a lifetime
Yeah,
sort of event.
that's one to remember, and that I know some people who's got that on their bucket list. That's a great trip.
What about you? What's something people don't know about you? Something
A
that's
lot.
not on your resume, it's not on LinkedIn. I might
Hmm.
have written a blog post about that, so maybe that is somewhere out there.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, now I got to
Maybe.
think of something
Could have been.
myself. Put me on the spot. I didn't think about it.
How many times have you
Um,
asked that question? You never thought about it?
isn't that how it goes sometimes? Like you're so
Always the
into
bridesmaid,
learning
never the
about the other
bride.
folks, you don't think that anyone's gonna ever turn 'em. I did have an interview though. I was interviewing Joel Goldberg. He's the voice of the Kansas City Royals, and he was on my
Yeah.
podcast. And at the end, he totally started turning the thing around and interviewing me. And I was like, wait a second, this isn't how this is supposed to go, Joel. And he was a great guy.
Well, we can't. You got to answer the question though. Like, what's something people
I was
don't
just
know about
buying
you?
time, Dave.
I know.
Goodness. I have a passion for coaching, and not like professional executive coaching, which I do like that too, but
Sports coaching.
basketball coaching specifically. And
Yeah.
part of it is like living vicariously, maybe through my kids, is where it started. But this is the
How old
first
are they?
year. They're about to be 12 and 15 in the next 45
Oh, so
days.
they're like
They're
legit basketball ages.
Yeah, my son's starting
Yeah.
high school, playing JV and varsity fall leagues and getting ready for tryouts. And my daughter plays for, like, I would say the number one travel team in Northern Virginia. She's way into it. And I coached them both since they could walk, which was super fun. This is the first year I'm coaching just to coach. And people go, oh, you have it's fifth grade girls. So I have a son and a daughter. And people will say to me, you have a fifth grade daughter also? I thought you only had two kids. And I go, no, I don't have a fifth grade daughter. I'm just coaching fifth grade girls basketball. This is my community service, my give back. And I really enjoy all the things. One, I also look back and go, wow, I was a terrible coach when I started coaching years ago. I've learned to be, more patient, develop the player, less about the skills. And it's really changed my outlook on what develops into the better players long term, not just pounding them into all the drills that my coaches did back in the day. So
There's a lot of similarities between coaching sports and interacting with teams of people everywhere else, like running a company, for example.
well, and here's the biggest that I've learned, and this was like an epiphany for me even in the past year and a half in terms of coaching. The best teams that I've coached are the ones that had the best culture on the team. It's not even the ones that had the most skill, because I've coached some teams where the kids were just off the charts skilled, but the team culture we didn't develop well enough, and so they were sort of mid teams. And I had teams where they were average skill, but they all loved each other. They all picked each other up. It was always high fives. It's okay, you'll get the next one. They support each other. Even when I'm screaming down their throats at them, they would pick each other up. And we did a lot of things outside the court, pizza parties and after game lunches, ice cream celebrations. And those teams outperformed the teams that I coached that had more skill because they played together. There was way more passing, sharing, thinking about, how they could support each other on and off the court. It was just an amazing epiphany for me to say, this matters so much more than I really thought at every level, at every aspect.
So let's bring that back to associations for a second, because I can't tell you how many times I've talked to associations where marketing and membership are at odds. They're competing. And other organizations where the leadership is, how do I put it, has removed themselves so far from the day-to-day operations that they have no idea what's happening beneath them. And none of these things create this culture of abundance, to use lack of a better word. When you find that team, that group of people in an association that are really grooving in marketing and membership, are working well together, and the leadership's involved and engaged and listening to the team, man, that's when usually those are the organizations that are trying new things without fear
Yeah.
and they're setting goals for themselves like above and
They're
beyond what they
growing
could. They're growing. Yep.
in a healthy way. And, just to bring it more full circle here and sort of weave in some of our previous conversation, those leaders that disengage themselves, as you said, and sort of pull away from the rest of the team, what they're really missing is they don't have the opportunity to ask the questions. Right? They're not listening as PropFuel does to what's really happening. And so you can think that by sharing down and telling everybody what they need to do, that that's being a good leader. But it's more about asking questions and understanding where there might be toxicity and trimming the tree of the toxicity and continuing to grow in a healthy way is actually the better leadership route for associations and other organizations. Well, Dave, I have the unfortunate pleasure. That's not even a pleasure. It's just an unfortunate act. I always have to wrap the episodes up, but I do so. I'd love to hear. I know you got a big network. You've met a lot of great people. Is there somebody in your network you think our audience would benefit from hearing from?
So as you were describing the teams and leadership, I immediately thought of Todd Hoptley, who is the AAAE, American Association of Airport Executives. He is the CEO, and he is just absolutely awesome. And this guy, it's public information. This guy, I think he made like $2 million last year, and the year before is like $1.6 million. But, there's a reason why people like this make money. He took this organization from about 30 million. So he's been CEO, I want to say I can't remember exactly, let's say 15, 20 years, something like that. But when he came on, within 5 years, he took them from 30 million to 107 million in revenue. They've been 30 million for a long time, and then he comes in and boom, like triples in size, more than triples. Quadruples in size. And now I'm doing math in my head, trying to figure.
We're good.
I'm not a
It's
mathematician,
real
but
growth.
did a lot.
That's incredible. I mean, associations that come to us and say they want to double in growth in 5 years, we kind of look at them like, "Are you ready for some real change?" Like that's going to take, and even that seems a little stretchy at times. So
And now they're up
this
to
individual's
130 million.
taking that and putting it on its head and say that's child's play.
And so then he, over the past several years, he's taken to 130 million, where they are now. And this guy came in, and the very first thing he did, even though he'd been there for a long time before he was CEO too, when he took the role of CEO, he interviewed every employee. There's like 60 or 70 employees at the time. By the way, he made all that money without hiring another person. In fact, sadly, they had to let some go. So they're smaller now at 130 million than they were at 30 million. And so anyway, that's a guy, man. I had him on both my other podcasts. So I have Association Strong. He was on that one. I was so fascinated by him that I brought him into my other podcast for entrepreneurs organizations just to ask him about leadership. And he's one to land if you can get him.
Well, fantastic. Well, we're after him now. Hopefully, your tip of the hat will help him come aboard. Thanks for the recommendation, and thanks for the time, Dave. This was awesome. Great conversation. I know
enjoyed it.
Time is precious, and I appreciate you donating some here to our show.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, Lucas.